Welcome to another episode of Wrenchin' and Ridin' TV. This is episode number 9 in our riding series. We're going to be starting off in the JPS Hebrew to English Tanakh, Genesis 2:4, story of Adam and Eve. So, first thing that I got to point out is 2:4 actually starts, and there is a space before you get down to the next part of 2:4, and then also to a new paragraph starts. So I'm going to read in the first paragraph right now, 2:4. Such is the story of heaven and earth when they were created. All right, now we're going to the next paragraph, which is also 2:4. When the Lord God made earth and heaven, when no shrub of the field was yet on earth, and no grasses of the field had yet sprouted, because the Lord God had not sent rain upon the earth, and there was no man to till the soil. But a flow would well up from the ground, and water the whole surface of the earth. The Lord God formed man. From the dust of the earth he blew into his nostrils breath of life, and man became a living being. And the Lord God planted a garden in Eden in the east, and placed there the man whom he had formed. From the ground the Lord caused to grow every tree that was pleasing to the sight and good for food, with the tree of life in the middle of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and bad. So that's as far as we're going to get into that one. To Genesis 2:10, which is the next part that we'll be reading out of. We're going to move over to the New International Version Study Bible, and it has a little preface talking about Adam, and this actually as a study tool. What I started out with when this was the first study Bible that actually was given to me, and it was just nice because that was a real blessing. This thing's pretty expensive, but the King James Version, you can pick up a King James Version that's got the new wording or the old wording for relatively, very inexpensive, $5 to $10, depending on the size of the Bible that you want, and then this thing's like a big monster that costs like $80 or something, and the King James study one's like $40 or $50, and the Tanakh was like $40 or $50. So, there, it's not hugely expensive considering what you're getting, but this is a fair amount of money. So, and back in the Pilgrim days and stuff, if you think back to then, a family might not have had enough money to even own a Bible. That was a luxury item back then. Now we have a big screen in every room and an Xbox hooked up to it, so it's kind of puts it into perspective a little bit, where we're at today. So I'm going to read the prefix first. It tells you that the story of Adam from 2:4 to 5:32 of Genesis. Learning about our ancestors often helps to understand ourselves. Adam and Eve, our first ancestors, were the highlight of God's creation, the very first reason God made the world. But they didn't always live the way God intended. Through their mistakes, we can learn important lessons on how to live rightly. Adam and Eve teach us about the nature of sin and its consequences. And that's a pretty true story there. Even for the monkey men, teaches a good story about that. So Adam and Eve, I'm going to start at 2 and 4. Genesis. This is the account of the heavens and the earth when they were created. And then it's got the same go down to the next paragraph, just like the Tanakh did. When the Lord God made the earth and the heavens, and no shrub of the field had yet appeared on the earth, and no plant of the field had yet sprung up, for the Lord God had not sent rain on the earth, and there was no man to work the ground, but streams came up from the earth and watered the whole surface of the ground. The Lord God formed the man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And the man became a living being. Now the Lord God had planted a garden in the east, in Eden, and there he put the man he had formed. And the Lord God made all kinds of trees grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food. In the middle of the garden were the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. All right. So I like how that one, the study guide, kind of works, and how they break it up right in the middle of the Bible. It'll actually have those things to kind of stop you, and be like, hey, before you go to the next part, read this, and it kind of gives you a brief overview. I like that. It's nice for studying, and I've read some of it against the King James, because that's the first thing I think you got to do is make sure that they're in agreement with one another, and then the more stuff that they have in common, the more validity it kind of has to the truths that it tells. So Adam and Eve, these are the generations of the heavens and of the earth when they were created in the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. And that one has there's no space in between 4 on this one. It said Adam and Eve and then got right into it. So now we're at Genesis 2 and 5. And every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew. For the Lord God had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. But there went up a mist from the earth, and watered the whole face of the ground. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And man became a living soul. And the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. All right. So he made man to tend the garden, and I like the King James, this study Bible. I'm just going to talk about these Bibles a little bit today, but there's a lot of little A's and different marks and stuff by the words that are telling you to go seek the the alternates for it. So there's a lot of this one, and the New International Study Version have a lot of that when you're reading. So forgive me for not reading perfectly. There's a lot of extra letters and stuff trying to grab my attention as I go, and but I'm really enjoying this. This new Scarlet. This is my second video, or I guess it'll be the third now, with a pop filter. I think that's helping a lot with the plosives. I've went back and checked the audio a little bit. I think it got quite a bit louder, so that's something that I'm happy about. Learning this equipment right now, and trying to spend a good deal of time riding and actually getting new footage to make more videos. The King James Study Version of this Bible is this one's a hardbound book. We're in the story of Adam and Eve. I like the prefix in the New International Version, so I might start making some notes out of the the notes that are in these Bibles and actually compare them as well, because they do go into some of the, in the stories, like it gives you what they believe, certain things were leading to, or, the moral of the story type of situation. I'm going to go right in here in the King James Version to the explanation that's marked 2 and 4 in the key, I guess. Generations, the Hebrew word for generations occurs 10 times in Genesis. At the beginning of each main section, then it says, see introduction, literature features. It sends you all over, but there's a lot to be learned in here. The heavens and the earth, and then it says, see note on 1:1, the phase of the generations, an i.e. account of the heavens and of the earth, introduces the record of what happened to God's creation. And even the earth, oh no, that's just parentheses, so that's fine. The blight of sin and rebellion brought a threefold curse that darkens the story of Adam and Eve in God's good and beautiful garden. See, so they disobeyed, and it tells you all about that. Then 1 on Satan, 3:14, talks about how he cursed him to the ground, and foretold that in the future the woman's the son was going to bruise his head, and he was going to bite the son's ankle. I'm about running out of time here. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, so I'd like to say thanks for tuning in, and I hope that you have a blessed day.